the thing that I love the most is don't quit before the miracle. I was 6 years old when I opened the kitchen cabinets where we kept the cooking pots and pans and the knives. And I took the knife out of the chopping block and I surveyed the blade. And I was six and I thought if I could just run this through my little heart, all this would be over. And I'm really glad I didn't take that action then. And I'm really glad that I didn't take myself out any earlier than my natural expiration date, whenever that will be, because it would have been the wrong person I was taking out. So don't quit before the miracle. And there's always hope and there's always help.
Hi everyone, welcome to one more episode of Pinky J Podcast. Today I have Suzanne Gold, and she is an author that wrote a book on childhood trauma and toxic family. And I'm super excited for everyone to hear her story. So, hi Suzanne, how are you?
Hey, Pinky. I'm super cool today. I'm happy to be with you and your listeners.
Thank you so much for being on. So, tell me more about your story about coming from a toxic family and that childhood trauma you had.
So I knew something was off, but I didn't quite know I was in a toxic family environment. That didn't bloom until my 20s when red flags started surfacing. I started demonstrating similar behavior that I saw growing up. I was in an abusive relationship. I was having great drama, huge fights, and moving in and moving out, and lying when it was just as easy to tell the truth. And my dad had an issue with alcohol. He's a genius astrophysicist, but he used alcohol to soothe. And my mother used food because she was stuck with a bit of a Peter Pan for a husband, and she had five kids before she was 30, and she had to take care of us rather than continue on with her education. So she soothed that rage through food. And back then, Pinky, they prescribed diet pills when you had a food disorder. And diet pills back then were speed. So I was being raised by an alcoholic and a speed freak. And I believe that she also had a mental health issue. And she would be incredibly loving and then turn on a dime, and you'd be beaten and you didn't know why. And it was a very punishing, unstable environment. My dad was fun. He was like, took us hiking and canoeing and biking and trampolining every Friday. And but you couldn't rely on him. And he was sort of, fair weather friend, if you know what I mean. So
Yes.
I didn't come out with the greatest tools for living. And that showed up early in my own adulthood, and I swore it never would. So I started to lose focus. My friends started getting seedier and more fair weather. I was losing my trajectory of definitive goals at work. And so I asked a friend for help, and she gave me the number of a therapist. And in my family, you didn't like pay somebody to talk about your
Right.
trouble, and you didn't air the family laundry in public, let alone in private. But thank God I went. I did go, and I walked in that little cubicle and I said, my life is totally out of control and completely unmanageable. And immediately this guy started talking about, was there alcoholism in my family? How much did I drink? How much did my father drink? I was like, I got a lot of problems. I don't know why we're talking about this, like why this has anything to do with anything. And he asked me to go to meetings while I was in treatment with him and not drink and learn about my father's drinking problem, and then go to some more meetings to learn about how alcoholism affected me as a child growing up. He was very clever. And I learned ultimately that I too had addiction issues and needed to be clean. And that was the level playing field that was necessary for me to really get a fresh start in adulthood on my own life.
Wow. So you are getting to that stage of becoming an alcoholic as well without you even realizing it.
Well, I took a slug from the jug, the wine jug that was in the refrigerator at work, and I was like, yeah, something's wrong with this picture. This is just like what my dad used to do.
Right.
And then I would black out when I drank. And when I went somewhere, I needed to know, was there going to be a margarita? Was there going to be wine? Was there going to be beer? I couldn't even fathom going somewhere socially and that there wasn't alcohol. So yes, it was a real issue. I mean, I hadn't bought my first champagne glasses, but I got clean and I've stayed clean ever since. It's sort of, it was initially really challenging, but then it just became a way of living, and I don't second guess it any longer.
Right. And the fact that you got help is amazing because, many people don't get help. They don't go to therapy. They feel ashamed, so that the fact that you understood, no, I need help, which is the first step.
Yeah, it was kind of not as cool and hip as it is today. I mean, my son's crowd, they're all like wearing their meds on their sleeves, but back then, yeah, it was pretty taboo still. There were a lot of Woody Allen movies going on yet that had to be exposed before it was like chic to be in therapy and have mental health issues. So I'm really glad for the transformation today.
I'm glad. And now that you saw, like, you went through this trauma with your childhood, how did you overcome it to become an adult and you got transformed in a way?
So it's been in layers. So the first necessity was to get clean. And then about 4.5 years into my sobriety, I was brokering a deal. So I was in the middle of two parties. It was a big company that two companies were coming together to form one, and they were throwing a huge event to celebrate. And I was known for matching celebrities to brands, and somehow I got matched to produce all the talent at the event, all the entertainment. And that was like very similar to a role that I played in between my mother and father, breaking up their fights and negotiating them back to some sort of, this like really struck a chord, and the post traumatic stress blew up. And I literally split out of my body and went into a suicidal depression. And I knew I was there, but I kept trying to control it. And luckily, I had really supportive friends around me that recognized what was happening. And they got me to a treatment center. I was living in New York City. It was down in Florida, where you are.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was a treatment center that treated addiction and codependence within the same unit. And I learned a lot there about clinical depression. And that's when I first went on medication. And it was a 10-year sort of odyssey off and on medication for clinical depression until I learned like what the red flags were when I was sort of heading towards that depressive state, and how to take practical steps to maneuver away from that in a healthy way and address the issues that were coming up. And that was really, really pivotal for me. And I've tried all sorts of talk therapies, which have been really helpful. It was really important that I get that storyline down in black and white. But what has really created the change, Pinky, is somatic modalities, because I hold my trauma in my body, in my cells of my being, in pockets of my body. And so to really do therapeutic modalities that explore that trauma from a physical level by going into the body, finding where it is, describing it, colors, time period, all that thing, and then releasing it from there has really shifted me on a cellular level, really reprogrammed those neural pathways. And that's what's really made the most difference and really ultimately changed the behaviors that were abusive towards myself and towards others that I had picked up along the way.
Wow, I never heard of that. Honestly, that's the first time I heard of that, that where you store it in the pockets of the cells. Like, that's so interesting. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people store it like that, but they don't know, like, this new world of how to get rid of it, how to let go of that trauma. That's so interesting. From there on, so how long were you in this treatment for?
I was in the treatment center for, I think it was 28 days. And initially, I didn't want to take the medication because I was sober. And I thought, you don't take medication and you can't be sober to take medication. But what I learned was it was non addictive, that my serotonin levels were like totally on empty, and they needed to be brought back up to a level where I could actually do the work, because I couldn't even do the work that was necessary. And it wasn't like that medication fixed me. But it certainly, even if it was, just a placebo, it helped me feel like I was leveling up, and
Mhm.
then I could get out of the strain and the drama of the grayness of the depression and start to verbally explore what was actually happening to throw me into that kind of depressive state and explore the trauma.
Right. And so after 28 days, just a quick question. Did your parents know you were going through this, or were they just not like really there?
I didn't share this with my parents. My sister has been incredibly supportive, and she came to visit me in the city probably a couple weeks after I was released from the treatment center. And I shared with her, and she was stunned. She couldn't believe it that I had experienced this, but I didn't go to my parents. At that time, I think I was still separated from my mom. I spent a 3-year period where I didn't speak with my mother. And because I would come back from family visits or from visiting, the town where I grew up, where my mother and father still were, and I would be suicidally depressed and I would be just brutal with myself, the self judgment and being sober. I couldn't shellac it over with, a vodka and tonic. I had to deal with the emotional pain and really explore it. And so, what I decided would be best for me was to create a strong boundary. And I did. And it really did help. Because ultimately, what I came to understand, Pinky, and it was with a lot of work, but I came to understand that she came from damage. She was horribly abused as a child and had been sexually abused and had never been able to treat it, explore it. And her father was beaten almost to the point of death by his stepmother when he was young, and he would not allow my mother's mom, my grandmother, his wife, to even show affection towards my mom, feeling that was the way she would be safe, from what he experienced. So it was hurt and damaged children
Mhm.
raising hurt and damaged children. And once I could really see that, that was a shift to more compassion and a step out of the rage and the anger and the resentment towards authentic compassion for who my parents were and the
Mhm.
walk they had walked. And yeah, I think there's no mistake in it, and I feel like that's why I've been sort of called. If you would have asked me at your age, do you think you're going to write a book called Toxic Family? I'd be like, no. I was first told when I was, let's see, it was 2007, and an Irish seer told me you have a book to write. It's going to help a lot of people. And then in 2019, I had back-to-back intuitives tell me you have a book to write. You have 3 books to write, was what the last intuitive said. And I was like, oh, fluff. Before before I have a library to write, I guess I better get going on this. And I was told I had a legacy to leave. And I was told a bit about what the book was going to be about. And I thought, oh, do I have to walk through all that stuff again? And the message was, well, you're not going to have to go deep in and feel it and really explore it like you did initially. But yes, you're going to have to tell the story now for others so they can let go of the bag of crap. I feel like I came in, I wanted certain experiences, including addiction, including clinical depression, including surviving narcissistic abuse and walking through it. The position of being the middle child in 5 kids with my parents was perfect placement for me.
Mhm.
Looking back, they were perfect players in my movie. And
Mm.
I definitely had exit point choices along the way, but I kept moving forward and saying yes and embracing it and with love and believing and not quitting before the miracle. And it's been completely worth it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. That's amazing how like you were able to overcome this trauma and you got to see it came from your mom and, family down the line because back then they never got help, right? It was very taboo. Like you can't talk about your feelings, you can't get help. And thankfully, you were able to overcome it. You got help and you saw what the core problem was, and you were able to overcome it and like get the help you need, which is important because I don't think many people are able to get the help they need.
It takes a lot of bravery. It takes a lot of humility, to say I'm not okay. I need help. Yeah, that's a brave person. That's a brave individual. And it's a choice to be awake and conscious and move through your life, or just stay in the little compartment that was constructed for you, and push the buttons you're supposed to push. Certain school and graduate from that school, and then go to this school and graduate from that school and work for a little bit and go back to that school and, and jump this hurdle at work and jump over that person. And, maybe not, maybe not.
No, it's true. I think we do live in this like society that we're not able to really open up too much. Well, like you said, nowadays, like the kids talk about mental health and therapy, but I still don't really see it being open. Like I think my age or when you're older, I think they're very still conservative and very like pressure about certain things. So yes, it does take a very brave person. And I think you're very brave to even talk about your toxic family and your childhood because a lot of people go through it and a lot of people come from toxic families and they won't open up about it. So I think you're super brave about doing that.
I think it's what I'm meant to be here for. I had a very sort of cherished career from the outside looking in. I worked with household names. I was up close and personal with a lot of people that, others would like to know and be close to. And, I took a lot of risks and I had a lot of opportunities, but ultimately, I think this is my life purpose. This is why I'm here, to start this conversation and to let others know, you know what? It's okay. It's okay to ask these questions, and it's okay to talk about dynamics that seem awry and seem off, and what's up with this picture, and why not off limits to share it, so other people, other human beings walking this walk, they can get a couple of steps ahead and get out of the pain that you agonized in for a decade.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a lot of pain and it's not easy. Like, especially you that like every time you would go see your family, you get back into this depression and to get out of it. And then it's the same cycle. Like, it's just not healthy for you. Not healthy for you, for your body, your mind, your soul, you know?
But my
Um,
family is very, very important to me. My mom's not here anymore, but we still communicate. I can feel her telepathically, intuitively. And sometimes I really smile. She's like cheering me from a distance, and so is her father, believe it. My dad is still here. I still have conversation with him, my oldest brother, my sister, my two younger brothers, and we engage. And I don't see them often. Genuinely, I can't say that word, genuinely
there you go.
happy to see them. And I don't hold anger and rage, and I don't hold animosity. Sometimes I'll go back into the post-traumatic stress and I'll have to like feel my arms and my legs and feel my breath to really ground and know, I'm not that 10-year-old girl being abused anymore. And this is today, and this is a different circumstance, and I've walked through that. So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And a lot of people still hold rage. So the fact that you're able to like, hey, relax, like come back, like you said, you're not that 10-year-old anymore, you know. The fact that you were able to heal is amazing. And your spirituality side, I'm sure helped a lot. So that's amazing. And the name of your book is, sorry, what's the name of your book again? Toxic.
It's called Toxic Family: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. And believe me, Toxic Family was not my title. That's my publisher's title. I was like, oh God, we're getting really Jerry Springer here. But my title was Magical Illumination: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom, because that's what I feel it's been. Like, I feel like I've been Sherlock Holmes or some kind of blessed fairy, like moving through all this stuff to come to a place that I see the beauty in it all. But Toxic Families tells it like it is. And it's probably a better way. to get the attention of people who are really being helped, by the book. And there's a workbook in the appendix. It's all the exercises that I've used regularly and still do use to get through some of the circumstances and some of the pain and the trauma.
Wow. So I would recommend you guys getting that book, especially if you are going through what Susan went through. And I'm sure she will help you a lot. She's such an inspirational person. And I'm glad you found your purpose, because one thing on this podcast I talk about is about having a purpose in life. So I feel like many people don't think that they have a purpose, right? That they're not worthy, they're not enough. So the fact that you said you found your purpose is amazing.
Thank you, Pinky. And I really appreciate the conversations you're bringing forward and your bravery to get behind your microphone and have these conversations and bring these topics up, because it is really important. What you're doing has value and it has worth. And I know it takes time, it takes devotion, it takes finance, it takes effort and commitment. So thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you so much for being here. Do you have anything to tell the listeners, an inspirational quote or something that can inspire them?
Well, the thing that I love the most is don't quit before the miracle. I was 6 years old when I opened the kitchen cabinets where we kept the cooking pots and pans and the knives. And I took the knife out of the chopping block and I surveyed the blade. And I was 6 and I thought if I could just run this through my little heart, all this would be over. And I'm really glad I didn't take that action then. And I'm really glad that I didn't take myself out any earlier than my natural expiration date, whenever that will be, because it would have been the wrong person I was taking out. So don't quit before the miracle. And there's always hope and there's always help.
Wow, I love that. Thank you so much. That gave me goosebumps. And with that, we're wrapping up today's episode. Thanks a bunch for hanging out with us. If you vibe with what you heard, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to keep the good times rolling. And always remember, you are enough, you are worthy, and you've got what it takes to keep positive through your journey. As always, keep living boldly, laughing loudly, and embracing the journey. Until next time, stay fabulous and keep spreading those good vibes.